But I wish I knew about Firespike before I started another bed in the front of my yard. This ornamental plant blooms in the fall and up until frost, and it is from originally Mexico and Central America. It has beautiful 3-inch spikes of tubular red blooms that the hummingbirds adore. It grows between 3 to 6 feet tall and about 3 to 4 feet wide. And I thought, what a perfect addition. I could put it in front of my oak leaf hydrangeas and it would receive morning sun and afternoon shade and would create a nice visual pop of color in the yard. So I thought, what a great plant to add because I want to provide additional sources of nectar for those hummingbirds, especially when they're migrating in the fall from up north down to South Florida, Caribbean, Mexico, and the places where they go. I wasn't too familiar with Firespike like I was familiar with the native Firebush. Two different plants. So I thought, let me do a little background research before I invest in purchasing plants. Let's check out my journey to explore the Firespike, to install them in my yard, and then to discover what happened, what I didn't know about Firespike that I wish I had known from the beginning. I came to check out the Firespike that was put here in this memorial bed. It's in partial shade. It does get some morning sun and also some afternoon sun. And it is blooming the real red Firespikes. Next to it is a native Firebush, and it's easy to compare. The native Firebush blooms are more orangish, a little different. Both are long tubular blooms. I thought it's doing well here. Lovely looking plant growing upright in the partial shade, and that'll be conditions that I have in the front of my yard. I went to Native Nursery in Tallahassee to see what the Firespikes looked like and gather information. Lovely spot they've created here, and the Firespikes are blooming next to a pool with a little cascade of water. And it's a lovely, soothing sound as you walk around. Firespike pairs well with the native Firebush. And of course, the hummingbird love it. Coming up on a mass planting of Firespike, and these are plants that have been here for a few years, and they've formed a nice clump. And it gives an opportunity to see how spectacular these plants look in the fall, and ideas for how you might include them in your own garden. So if we walk around here and look at this whole display of Firespike, you have an idea of what a mass planting can look like. Even some Firespikes that were volunteers picking up in the parking lot to give you an idea of the blooms up close. Here's another one. The red spikes of bloom against the green foliage. It's really luscious looking. I checked out the USDA hardiness zones, and it is 8 to 11, and I thought perfect. As far as sun requirements, it likes full sun, partial shade. It prefers morning sun and afternoon shade, especially in southern areas. Soil would be perfect for my yard. It likes sandy to partially loamy soil. That's what I've got. And a pH range from slightly acidic, which would be around 6.2, up to slightly alkaline, which would be around 7.2, 7.3. So it was like, oh, this is a perfect fit. The last consideration for my yard was what kind of watering requirements are going to be necessary for this plant. Turns out it has moderate watering requirements, and once established, it can be somewhat drought tolerant. And I thought, well, that fits in well with my oak leaf hydrangeas and the other plants that I have growing in my yard. The other feature that I liked about this plant is that it's low maintenance as far as having to worry about spraying for black spot or pests or things like that. It could get aphids. You got to watch the leaves for that. But other than that, if you have predatory insects that come for the aphids, then that could handle the aphid situation. So I thought, well, let me try the plants. I purchased red ones, and then I discovered that they're pink ones. And I thought, oh, red and pink. So I purchased pink ones. What went wrong? What I didn't know about this plant was that the deer love it. And I have a deer problem in my yard. They hop over my chain link fence and graze on plants that they find tasty. Let's go take a look at the damage the deer have done. On the walk to where I planted the fire spikes, you can see I have deer fencing around some of my vulnerable plants. This is my camellia, and rather than being stripped to the roots, it has new growth and is thriving. My oak leaf hydrangeas I protect because the deer come in and will eat those down to the ground. Here is my fire spike bed. First plant, which was a red, eaten down, the plant died. This next plant is pink, and you can see some basal leaves coming up from the base. The roots are still thriving. All of these stalks are left. The deer stripped the leaves. Here is another plant that survived, has some basal leaves, and then the last one just gonna make it if it gets some protection. Trying to build deer fence on this long rectangular bed. And that was one mistake, to make a bed like that when I have to put up deer fencing, or transplant these to another location and use them as specimen plants so that I can cover them individually like I've done with my other plants. I hate to let them die because they are beautiful blooming plants when they can get established. Let me see if I can do the deer fencing. I'm going to try that and see if I can keep the deer off and they can grow and establish enough roots to get them through the winter. If you love hummingbirds and want to create a habitat for them in your yard, as well as a habitat for other critters and butterflies, then subscribe, Garden Yay, for more gardening tips and information. See you again soon.